without any further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Brooklyn's finest architect, and also proud to say my brother-in-law, Henry Radusky.
Anyway, I'm Henry Radusky. I'm a product of something in similar backgrounds of all of you here. I went to City College of New York way back when. I graduated with a Bachelor's of Science degree, and I went one additional year and I obtained my Bachelor's of Architecture degree. I've been practicing the field of architecture for about 32 years. I was lucky enough to get out of school at an early age. I served an internship with several firms. When I got out of school, it was recession time. Not quite as bad as it's been the last few years, but it was pretty bad then too. And I'm here to kind of encourage you all, to do well in your future successes. I'm going to tell you some of my life's experiences so you have an idea what you got to go through, and with a little bit of perseverance and a little bit of luck and God's help, you get someplace. One of the first jobs I got I think it was early 1980s, was I couldn't find a job in architecture. I graduated City College. I graduated with honors. I thought I had the talent, but there was no business, which is something akin to what's happening now, or what's happened in the last few years. I took a job because I needed a job. I wanted a job. It was an electrical engineering firm. Nothing to do with architecture, but it was related only in the sense that, you sat down there, and this was before the age of AutoCAD, and you sat down with a triangle and a T-square, and you start drawing lines. And this being electrical engineering, I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but I started with a salary of $140 a week. This was after graduating with an advanced degree in college. But I took the job. Slowly but surely, one thing leads to another, and you don't stay there. I think I got a raise like the first week because I realized that I was over talented for the position that I was given. So I stayed there for a little bit, and I hopped around. After 3 years, I was able to take the licensing exam in architecture. Yeah, and thank God I passed it on first shot, and I became licensed. Now, I was 24 years old, and I was a licensed architect, which was kind of rare. It was kind of young. I took a job in Wall Street in the facilities department, and here I was thrusted into a department handling interiors for their corporate offices. They had many offices throughout Wall Street and Jersey, and one of the things I'll always remember is that here I was 24 years old, relatively young, and I had all these people to boss around, to supervise, and they were all in the 40s and 50s and even 60s, and it was kind of, a little strange. But they got to know me, they got to know my personality. I like to work with people. I'm not a confrontationalist. I like to work in and out with people, and I stayed there for a while, and I grew. My salary grew tremendously then, too. It was a Wall Street firm. Then what happened was I started doing side work. And the side work I started doing happened to be located in Borough Park, Brooklyn, for the Orthodox community. So I did my day job, and at night I did my side job. After a couple of decent works that I did on the side, and this is where the entrepreneur side of it comes in, I decided to say so long to my day job and start my own professional firm. It was a one-man firm. That was me. I did everything. I cleaned the bathrooms, I did the forms, I did the drawings, I went to the building department. I'll get into that if I have time about the building department. You have to get permits, you have to get approvals from the agencies. But I did everything. And slowly but surely, with a lot of perseverance and a lot of recommendations and word of mouth, the business grew. The business peaked at the height right before the recession at 55 licensed professionals. You may or may not know about the business of architecture, but 55 is an awesome number. It's big number. It's a big number to have to run a company, simply because you got to make sure that every Friday you got to pay these people, you know, and that the income got to get there. It's difficult. It's a little bit difficult, but anyway, in the course of my, you know, practice, we grew to be one of the largest firms in Brooklyn. We still are, but albeit smaller than we used to be because recession. But you guys are in now, and I heard Ted talk about real estate. You know, a lot of you are interested in real estate, and it's an exciting, it's a dynamic time to get into real estate right now, because as Ted mentioned, you're going in with the wave just starting. I had to let go a lot of people because the industry came to a grounding halt. But I didn't have to close shop. I went down from 55 people to 15 people, which is it's a big drop, yet still maintain the business, and now we're growing again. So we see the cycle, and that's how real estate goes in and out, and we're doing work in areas that probably before all you were born, you wouldn't dare set foot in, like Bushwick, East New York, Greenpoint, because they were dangerous areas. But there were always pioneers, people that, you know, bought, invested in places that they saw a future, they saw a vision. And now you're starting to see reaping the rewards. My main business is architecture. That's what I do for a living. That's, as they say in Hebrew, it's my parnasa. But, you know, in the profits that come in the business, I tend to also invest in real estate. And what I've done in the past is I have partnered up with some of my clients and taken a piece of the action in lieu of fees. It's worked out. Sometimes it's worked, sometimes it hasn't worked, but for the most part it's worked very, very nicely. So, you know, as you go through life, you want to maybe work a little bit less hard in certain fields and reap the rewards of your investment and see the income coming in. But getting back to architecture, you know, as I started earlier, it's a profession like doctors, like attorneys, and you got to go through schooling. It's hard, dedicated work. You have to deal with a lot of different facets. I don't know, you know, sometimes there's a romanticism about architecture. You hear about architects, and they do these wonderful buildings, libraries, museums, skyscrapers, you know, everything is, wow, spectacular. But there's a lot that goes behind the scenes that you don't see. You have to deal with local agencies, talking about Department of Buildings. You have to deal with the Transit Authority. You got to deal with the Highway Department. You got to deal with the Fire Department. You got to deal with Landmarks Commission. All these are agencies that you deal with. You have to deal with zoning and building code. Zoning and building code is a dynamic set of rules. They don't stay fixed. They change. They may change every 2 years, they may change every 3 years, they may change every two weeks. And you have to keep up with them. I was a victim of certain buildings where we had approvals by the underlying zoning, and then all of a sudden city planning came along, which is another agency. They changed the zoning overnight, literally overnight. And those approvals that we received were all for naught. We had to throw them out and start from scratch. The city's been undergoing a process of downzoning in a lot of areas because they see a proliferation of people taking advantage of building very, very big buildings. I'm probably one of the biggest culprits of that. I've been written about. When I look it up, you can believe what you read, whatever the case may be. They called me too tall Radusky because one of the things I did for my developers is I built buildings that were maybe a little bit taller than they wanted to see built. But I always stayed within the confines of the zoning laws. And if the zoning laws gave me that opportunity, I took that opportunity. I didn't shy away from them. The business of architecture, architect himself is like the quarterback in putting up the building. He doesn't do the construction, That's done by GCs, that's done by construction managers, things like that. But he's the quarterback. He's like what I call the Eli Manning of putting the building together, okay? Because he's got now to deal with your client, who could be a pain, could be somebody knowledgeable, or could be somebody that just got money and doesn't know what the hell they want to do. You got to deal with them. As I said before, you got to deal with the zoning, see what the lot, the property allows you to do, and you try to see what loopholes, what's available, what you could do. Because these people are coming, these clients are coming to you to, I would say, in my career, maybe 98% of the time, it's been to max out. That's the key word, to max out what you could build. So you need to do that research, and you have to see in what combinations you could design a building where you can build as big a building as you can to reap the biggest rewards for your client. And it's a challenge. It's an ongoing challenge. It's an ongoing challenge every day because the zoning text changes. So every day, you think you've done something for 10 years, and all of a sudden the next day it's different. So it's out the window. So you got to start all over again. But you deal with that. You deal with the zoning change. You deal with building codes. We just changed. 2008, this building code change that had been in effect since 1968. So for 40 years it hadn't changed. In 2008 it changed dramatically. I could understand building code changing because it's all geared towards fire safety, life safety, egress. Now, we've had an unfortunate series of accidents over the last few years in New York City, and a lot of it is attributable to, the fact that the developers cut corners, they didn't follow the zoning rules, building code rules. But you have to keep in tune. You have to keep in tune. You have to keep in tune and see that you follow these ordinances. Besides that, you're going to deal with your mechanical engineer. You're going to deal with your structural engineer. You're going to deal with your civil engineer. You're going to deal with all kinds of different parties, different people who are going to come back to you with their data because you're not an expert. As an architect, you can't claim that you're an expert in everything. You know what you got to do. You got to put it together. You got to put everything together. You got to coordinate everything together. Coordinate your structural componentry. You got to coordinate your mechanical componentry. It's just a simple fact. When you run ductwork, you got to make sure that the ductwork is not going to smack right into a steel beam, right? Because it doesn't do that. You can't penetrate the beam, and you don't really want it to drop below, because then you're going to lose headroom. So you have to coordinate that. You have to put all those pieces together like a jigsaw puzzle. When that's all done, then you deal with the building department. And the building department is there as not a user-friendly agency. They're there to make life as miserable as possible, and to see that, that you, I guess, taking their side of their viewpoint is that, you'll make sure that your building is as safe as possible. But, there's always two sides of a coin. There's always two ways to look at things. Then you get your approvals, and you get your permits, and then you pass it down to your contractor, your developer, your construction manager. Then they start with the work with the building. That's the next facet. That's the next headache that you deal with. But it's challenging, because people start putting things together. There's new construction, which you're starting with a blank canvas and you're starting from scratch. But there's a lot of alteration work too. And when you do alteration work, you deal with things that are unforeseen. When you open up ceilings, you open up walls, you open up foundations. You don't know, we don't have X-ray eyes, and we don't have a knowledge of what's there was built maybe 50, 60 years ago. We don't know that. So you got to all take that into account. When you put up the building, there are things that dynamics change again. You may have to make changes on your plans to conform to what's there. Not in a new building, but a new building has other headaches too. New buildings, because you're introducing new systems, and again, the coordinating part of it is difficult. And every so often you deal with contractors who are there to cut corners and put you at risk, because you have liability, and you have to make sure that your building that you design stays up and works. But you have to be on top of it. You have to be vigilant about what's going on there throughout the life of the project. That could be 6 months, that could be 3 months, that could be 2 years. I have buildings that aren't finished over 10 years, so you got to be patient. the final outcome of finishing a building is to get that elusive C of O. And that's one thing that you should all know about when you delve in real estate, that you have a valid C of O, certificate of occupancy. You can start off with a temporary certificate of occupancy as well, TC of O. But that renders the building legal. That renders the building that it's there, it's legal, whether it be a 10 family, 8 family, with a store, offices, whatever the case may be, that renders it that you could now refinance.
Sign-offs in order to get
The
a
sign-offs,
CO.
the sign-offs are very difficult. They're extremely difficult.
So a lot of people sign off before you can gain entrance to one of the buildings.
A lot
Fire
of, yeah.
department,
Yeah.
the building department.
That's right. The highway department. Now, a few years back, the parks department got involved heavily in design of buildings because they asked for greenery, they asked for open space. Not altogether a bad idea, because I particularly love, trees and grass and so on. But, the design that you've done typically for 20 years all of a sudden is out the window because you have to meet these new regulations to conform to open space and things of that nature with grass and trees. But that's another agency that you have to get sign off. So it's not, you read in the paper, you go to the New York Times, you see sometimes they have a written article about an architecture, a piece of architecture, a building, whatever. There are a million and one things to deal with in putting up a building. And primarily the architect is the guy. That's the guy who puts things together. That's the guy who makes sure that at the end he gets the sign off and he gets the C of O's and makes the building suitable for occupancy. It's a tough job, but it's my job. It's one I've been doing for 32 years, so I really can't say I complained. At the height of the market, you guys were looking to get rich, and I got to tell you that I was doing very, 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 very well. Very well, and talking about beyond 6 figures. That's how well it was doing. Now things have tempered a little bit, but again, this is the perfect time for you people because it's on the upswing, and it may take another 6 months, another year and a half, 2 years. But you're also young. I see you. I was telling Ted before I got here, I haven't been to a college campus in 30 years. I see you all here, and and I see you eager. I love it. I see what I really appreciate you guys taking that interest in listening to all your ideas and entrepreneurial ideas. It's great. I wish I was back in your age and doing it again, but you can't do that. But I stick to what I got. I've invested in quite a few properties over the years, either profits or in joint venture. And I've been recognized, whether for good or bad, I've been recognized and won certain awards. And there's something to be proud for. Sometimes your ego also, when you drive by a site that you're the architect, because it leaves a lasting legacy. Let's face it. That building should be up there for the next 100 years. So you'll be gone, whatever, but your legacy is left behind. So it's always about the money, but it's always
Unlike
about
other professions, like a doctor. Your patient dies, and that's the end of it. Right? You drive past a building like this, right?
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
for the rest of your life, that this is your artwork. You're a businessman. You're an optician. You're a mathematician. I mean, the more I hear about architecture, it takes into all of those things into account. It's not just, and I'm sure before Henry came here, you'd think of these architects whipping up these places like the Guggenheim and fancy, buildings like the World Trade Center.
Yeah, let me just say that those are, you can count them in your two hands, that level of architects.
Right.
Whether they're not necessarily that much more talented, they do have creativity, and it's just their luck at place and time. That's what it is.
Right.
But like I said, you can go through Norman Foster, Richard Rogers, Frank Gehry, and on and on and on, and there's maybe 20 maybe throughout the world that you recognize as architects. But then there's the other 500,000 other architects, or wherever they are in the world, that you try to make as good a living as you can in doing what you do. I'd love to show you some of the work we've done since I've described, and then I'll be here to answer some questions. I'm trying to think of anything that I left behind, but
You have any questions before he shows you some of the work? That's obviously. Go ahead.
Sure.
Okay, so there are a lot of industries or I guess jobs, if you will, that require, like you said, you have to go through a lot of people, a lot of different departments. So for example, when you look at the shipping and distribution area, there's a lot of under the table stuff, you gotta deal with the unions. So as an architecture, you have to deal with all these different types of offices and departments. How much under the table stuff goes on?
It used to go on. It used to go on.
Okay.
It's been cracked down. It's been really clamped down. I know exactly where you're going. I know exactly what you're saying. Because when I started out, I was a young kid, 24, 23, 25, and yeah, I saw it done.
So when the plumbing inspector came around from the city and he winked at you with the left eye, you knew he meant the left pocket. He blinked at the right eye, he meant to put the 20
Something to
in
that
the right
nature.
pocket.
Something to that nature. But just to answer your question, there's been so many arrests. You could have a telephone book of how many people have been arrested
So
over the years.
it's very little to non-existent today.
Right now, to my knowledge, it's non-existent.
Okay.
To my knowledge, it's non-existent.
Okay, we have time for one more question and then.
Sure.
Okay, so in order to go, let's say maybe not into architecture, but into real estate, do you think, what degree do you think it's best to get? Like,
In real estate? Well, you could go into, I'd say, real estate management. You know, there are courses there's schools that have courses in real estate finance and real estate management. There's plenty of schools like that, and that you're going to get to know as far as the your rent rolls versus what's the property worth. Ted mentioned location. No question about it. It's the location's number one, number two, number three, number four, because you gotta buy in the right place, and it's always there's an adage about always buying the worst house on the best block as opposed to the best house on the worst block. There's no question about it. But you get to know what you can generate in income. You got to pay tax, you got to pay insurance, you got to pay liability. There's all expenses, you got depreciation. All these things come into play. So you learn that in school. You learn that in courses as to where you see, once you focus it on a particular property, that what you can develop. You go to an architect, you see what can I get out of this property. Because that's not your expertise. It's somebody else's expertise. That's why people come to me to see what can I do here, and you start developing slowly but surely. Yeah. I love it. I live right there. I love it. I think it's going to be. You've only seen the surface. You have no idea what's coming. Still, in another 2-3 years, it's going to be the hub of New York City. Forget Midtown. Forget Upper East Side, West Side. This place in that area, by Trade Center site. God protect us from any further terrorism. It's going to be an incredible place. Really, really.
Okay, well, I know a lot of you have the next class you have to go to. I want to thank Henry for coming here to class today. And if you have any questions, we'll be here for a few minutes after class.
Anyway, if you want, I have business cards, and if you go on my website, you'll see some of the buildings that we've done, and some of them are pretty nice.
Yeah.